time. Woohoo! Let's talk about the Knicks off-season moves, because after going out in the Eastern Conference Finals, it is definitely something to celebrate, but there's definitely room for improvement. And I think the Knicks have a chance to make some significant off-season moves to their roster. That doesn't necessarily mean, making the biggest trade, but, bolstering their bench and stuff like that could actually be more impactful than a giant trade. So let's talk about it, break it down, what I think the Knicks should do this offseason. So first, I want to give you some of the financials and, the state that they're in. So hopefully I remember all these numbers properly because I have to remember them all off the top of my head. But going into this offseason, the Knicks are at $200 million in salary. Now, they are 3.8 over the first tax apron. They are $8 million under the second tax apron. They get $3.5 million in relief if they waive PJ Tucker or, let him go by June 29th, I believe that's the deadline. And if the Knicks sign somebody to the mid-level exception, the $5.7 million, they will trigger the second tax apron, which we obviously know has consequences, unfortunately. So one of the consequences of the second tax apron is that if they were to try to make a trade, which we know Giannis is one of the rumored players swirling around, if they were somehow in the second tax apron, that means they cannot aggregate salaries for Giannis or anybody else. So what that means is it would have to be a one-on-one swap. So again, not saying they're trading Cat, but it would have to be Cat for Giannis, straight up. They can't include Cat and then somebody on the bench and stuff like that. So that's one of the consequences of being in the second tax apron. That makes, trades that much harder, especially for someone of Giannis's salary and all that kind of stuff. So that is where the Knicks are at going into this offseason. Financially, they have 4 roster spots available, I believe. And the free agents that they have, or the players rather that are free agents after this season, well, now the season's over, is DeLon Wright's a free agent. Cameron Payne's a free agent, I believe. Landry Shamet, Precious Achiuwa. I think Ariel Hukporti has a team option. And there might be one other person who's a free agent, but I think that's it. So, with that being said, how do they upgrade this roster with potential financial restrictions? Even if they're, still in the first tax apron, there are still restrictions. They don't have a max salary slot to just go out and sign anybody. So what do they do from here? Well, I think people, once they see what actually happened in this playoff run, they're actually in a really good spot. I don't think there's anything that they need to overreact to. Now, again, just like I said about any team, if you can get Giannis, you go and get Giannis. The way that every team was trying to get Kevin Durant when he was a free agent in 2016, the way that every team wanted to get LeBron in 2010 when he was a free agent, you go after those players because they are literally top 2, number 1, LeBron, number 2, KD, whatever you classified them as, right? At that time, when you're someone of that caliber, you try to go get them. So besides that, right, if we're just talking about smaller roster moves, what can they do? Well, I think they need another 3-and-D wing, but also someone to replace Precious Achiuwa, who hopefully gets minutes in the playoffs, because I still don't understand why Precious didn't get minutes. I don't know, but I think Precious might leave. I don't know. I'm not sure. But if he does leave, you have to replace him, so to speak, because I feel like Precious was very valuable to the team. I just really don't understand why he didn't get minutes in the playoffs. So, while Precious is not necessarily a 3-and-D guy, I do think there are a couple free agents out there who you can, target and replace if you're the Knicks for Precious Achiuwa. And one of them is Isaiah Jackson. Now, ironically, Isaiah Jackson is on the Pacers. And if I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, he had some kind of season-ending injury. Was that this year or last year? I'm trying to remember. But he had some kind of season-ending injury, and I just don't remember what it was. I don't remember if it was this year or last year. But he's kind of, if he's healthy now, because again, I think he's still injured. If he's injured, regardless, he's kind of fallen out of the rotation just because as you could see, the Pacers are going 10 deep even without him, 11 deep. They don't necessarily need him. He's kind of become expendable for them. But if you remember, if you watched Isaiah Jackson when he was playing on the Pacers, he is kind of like a Precious Achiuwa player in the sense that he's going to bring energy, effort when he's out there. Like, I remember him being a high energy guy. And I'm not saying they play exactly similar, but I feel like he is someone, I really had to look it up after this video, what injury he's coming off of. But he is definitely someone who could fill the Knicks roster and do really good things for them off the bench, give them energy and give them all the things that they need, again, especially if Precious leaves. And he's only like 23, so I think he might be someone who would be perfect to add to the roster. Now, I believe he's a restricted free agent, so if the Pacers obviously want to keep him, they can match any offer he gets anywhere else. So that is something to consider, obviously, but I don't know what his offers are going to be like because we haven't seen him in a while, right? So if the Pacers are okay with letting him go, he's definitely someone I would target because I think he would be able to go on a veteran minimum. The other wing player, who this is more of a 3-and-D kind of guy, although I guess he technically plays the 4 at times, but it just depends, would be Taurean Prince. Now that is someone we know who is literally 3-and-D, right? He'll shoot the 3. Like that's kind of what he, I don't want to say labeled himself as, but like that's kind of what he got the label for, at least later on in his career, right? And so I think he's like 32, so he's definitely a seasoned player in the league. He's been around, he knows how to play, and he is someone who will also hustle. Like, he is definitely a hustle type player, and he'll play, like, he'll give you good minutes and play some defense and hit some big shots, right? And so I feel like the Knicks could definitely use someone like him, especially to come off the bench. Like, that would be a perfect person to have, let's just say, standing in the corner to shoot a 3 or whatever it is. So those are the two, and I think he would, be coming on a veteran minimum. I think his offers around the league at this point would be a veteran minimum wherever he goes. Maybe he'd get mid-level somewhere, but like, I don't see a max deal, coming right now for him. So those are the two forwards, if I were the Knicks, that I would target in free agency, see if you can get them to come. And Taurean Prince is an unrestricted free agent, so he can go wherever he wants. And then, see, the thing is, from the guard spot and the guard standpoint, I like the guards they had. It's just they didn't play them, right? Like, I've been a fan of DeLon Wright for years. I feel like you finally saw it. Like, you saw it in the playoffs. If you have not watched DeLon Wright in his career, that was what I have been watching every time he plays. It's like he never gets consistent minutes, and I just don't understand why. And you can see when he's out there, he makes a big impact. He's a great defender. Of course, like, I'm not saying he's the best three-point shooter or nothing like that, but like, you also have to get into a rhythm. Like, you have to be out there, to get a rhythm. So I will say he's better offensively than maybe we got to see, during that playoff run. But defensively, he's always been a really good defender. Like, when he was on Washington, when he was on the Wizards, this was maybe 3 years ago or whatever it was, I remember he was playing lockdown defense, which is not like breaking news, but then he got hurt. And I remember, like, he was going to be an all-NBA on the all-NBA defense team that year had he not got hurt. Like, he was definitely going to make maybe second team. Like, I'm not saying he was going to be on first team, but he was definitely going to be on the defense team. And then he got hurt and he didn't qualify or whatever. Or he didn't play enough games, for people to vote for him. But, like, that's the type of defender he is. He's smart. You saw it in the playoffs. He doesn't really turn the ball over. And then Landry Shamet has also bounced around a bit in his career, but as you saw, he can make a big impact. He's definitely, more of a shooter than DeLon Wright. Landry Shamet's known for, making three-point shots, and he can play some defense too. I wouldn't say he's as good of a defender as DeLon Wright, but he definitely, can hold his own, right? So if I'm the Knicks, I'm just trying to get those two back and then actually playing them. that's really what it is. Like, to me, I looked at the free agents who are guards, and there are some people you could always target, right? But like, I feel like those are good enough guard. Like, we're talking about, you have Jalen Brunson as your obviously #1 point guard, and then you have Miles McBride as your backup point guard. That's really good. Like, we're talking about DeLon Wright being your third string point guard, who I think should be getting consistent minutes on other teams, right? So I would try to convince him to stay. I don't know if he wants to stay. I don't know what his offers are somewhere else, but I would try to convince DeLon Wright to stay. So I think they should just try to run it back from that standpoint, and then, like I said, try to add some kind of wing or, forward to bolster the roster, especially if Precious Achiuwa leaves. Now, for the young guys, we never know when someone's just going to have a breakout season. So are the younger guys going to get more minutes next season and then show, their development and stuff like that, like Tyler Kolek and stuff like that? So that really just depends. That's not really something I have an answer for. Like, it just depends if they're going to get minutes and if they're going to, I'm sure they're going to work hard in the summer, but it really just depends, how their progression goes. Because sometimes players just come out of nowhere and they end up being part of the roster and the rotation when they weren't before. So then a need that the team may have for a guard, a wing, or whatever like that may actually be filled within, the organization rather than free agency. Like, if you can't find it and then it ends up being someone within. So that really just depends. I can't predict how that's going to play out. Someone said, yes, so happy you're live. Thank you, appreciate that. I'm glad you're enjoying the live. And I see someone else said, DeLon is a nice dude. Got his autograph early this season. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's great. Congratulations. I hope it was a good experience. Obviously, you said it was because you said he's really nice. So I'm glad you had that really good experience. So yeah, I would just, if I'm the Knicks, I'm just going to try to keep those two guards, DeLon and Landry, if they want to come back, and play them during the season so they can, it's not even just because I think what people, not that they don't understand, but it's not just that they need time to get in their own rhythm and, I don't want to say get in basketball shape because that doesn't make sense, but playing you can't mimic a real game. You have to be out there to, read the defense. It's just different, right? So those things aside, also, Tibbs, credit to him for, running that lineup where it's all the defenders around Cat and then Cat was just dominating. That lineup was I don't know what it was. It was plus 30 or something in the playoffs, during the Pacers series when it was DeLon Wright, Landry Shamet, I think it was Miles McBride, and then was it Josh? No, it wasn't Josh Hart. I'm trying to remember who the fourth person was, but then it was Cat. It was all centered around Cat. Jalen Brunson was on the bench. I don't think Mikal Bridges was in that lineup. Maybe OG was out there, but I can't remember who it was. But regardless, it was just centered around Cat being the offensive, #1 option, talent, and then a bunch of defenders around him. And that lineup was crushing the Pacers, literally crushing them, because they were, even though Cat is not a great defender, they were able to get stops because everybody else was able to hold their own and then potentially, have to rotate, if Cat, gets a bad matchup. And I felt I don't know why. I'm not sure, but if you noticed when that lineup would play, Cat would play actually really good defense. I guess he was playing off the other guys and it just made it easier for him. I don't really know the specific reason why, but if you watch that lineup, they were also getting stops because Cat was actually playing pretty good defense. That lineup just worked together. So I'm saying credit to Tibbs for, trying something out and figuring out that lineup worked together. But they could have potentially went to that in game 1, right? If they had been playing DeLon Wright and Landry Shamet earlier in the season and mixing it up to see what worked. So that was really people's issue. It was like, you go in the playoffs, you tend to shorten your rotation a little bit depending on the team and stuff like that. But it's like, the problem that people had was like waiting until it was like panic mode, so to speak, to like experiment. And luckily it worked. But like, what if it didn't work? Like, it would have been nice to have, you know, experimented earlier on in the season. I know Landry Shamet was hurt for part of the season. That's why they didn't sign him. And like, they signed him and then I think they waived him because he had shoulder surgery or something. So I understand that he didn't play for part of the season, but him and DeLon Wright were healthy for at least the last 2 months, right? So they had time to experiment. And so next year, like I said, if they come back, my focus, if I'm the Knicks, is kind of running it back unless you can get Giannis or something that like really alters, you know, how you can operate or how you can play or a trade you can make, right? Stuff like that. I don't know if you want to do the mid-level because going into the second tax apron can be, unfortunately, more costly than not, depending on who it is. Like, it's just really complicated and hard. So I think they should try to at least maybe avoid that until they need to. And then, like, if they bolster their roster before that and they still have the mid-level available, then you can, you know, do it because you already filled 3 of the roster spots and now your roster looks really good. Like I said, try to get a wing 3-and-D guy or someone to replace Precious Achiuwa if he does leave. And it's kind of, like I said, in a way, not run it back, but run it back with like tweaks and improvements and just kind of maximizing everybody's talents and their strengths and minimizing their weaknesses. That's really what they need to do, you know, this season. Like, they were really that close to the NBA Finals. Like, I feel like people are kind of talking about them as if they were not one game away from the NBA Finals. Like, they were that close. So, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, this live stream rather.